Hey, my name is Dean Scurry. I'm an artist and I live in Ballymun.
Hello, Dean. How are you? I actually was trying to remember. I met you first. It's about 16 years ago, sitting outside the old White Elephant, the old Reco building. And I remember just having started it in Axis, and I was trying to put a gig together with all local bands and local artists. And I said, "Who do I talk to?" It was you. So, and not much has changed over the years. But come here to me. Can I ask you? You grown up in Ballymun, like was Was it a surprise that you kind of got into the arts and activism where you are now? Or was that always in you, like when you were growing up? Like, were you always into the arts?
Um, I'm into the arts because of its role in social change. You know, like I'm into music, I'm into dancing, I'm into film, kind of on a personal level. But in terms of the potential of using the arts for social change, because when I grew up in Ballymun, at the start it was, supposed to be a utopia, and then very quickly it went downhill for a number of reasons. And my ma and a number of other strong women kind of seeing that if they don't get a grip of this themselves, and take an active role in their own community, that it will slip an awful lot quicker. So they started to, one very simple thing they done was they ran kind of summer projects, and they went door to door and with a bucket to fund them, and then that door to door funding turned into the funding for the youth centre up in Poppentry. It was like a sports recreation centre, very very similar to the building that I work in here in Ballymun. So I kind of seeing that, getting out there and getting in the community and involving people was one way to participate in your own community.
Yeah,
and then using art as a vehicle for that was just it was more effective sometimes than going out and protesting.
yeah. I mean, like you as a young fella, did you play sports, Dean? Were you kind of into sports side stuff?
Yeah, so I'm like 6 foot, and 30 years ago when I was a teenager, 6 foot was tall. So I used to be smack bang in the middle of the GAA team in Ballymun Kickham's or in St. Joseph's. So it would have been quite handy at GA. Would have played Crow Park a couple of times. Never really got into soccer, and I've done a bit of BMXing and that type of stuff. So usually active, but the whole team sports thing never really connected with me for some reason. And I think it was about the time I was watching. I was a big Liverpool fan when I was like a teenager, and then I heard on the news how much one of the players was being paid, and I just thought it would take me that 100 years to earn that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I kind of disengaged from watching sport, but I'll be very active, as you know. I'll be out swimming and on my bike all the time.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because I mean one of your huge skills, and in a way your art form is that ability to connect people and things and values actually in a way. And did you, like, when you were growing up, Dean, was that something you were aware of, that you were able to kind of connect things?
Yeah, I have the ability to be in a crowd of people and connect them in a way that they didn't realize that they could be connected. So that kind of soft interpersonal skill, I have that in buckets. Now there's other skills that I don't have in buckets, but that's just one that I know I do have, and I kind of connect to people, not only in their head but in their heart. And art is one of the ways that I do that. And then more recently, connecting to people kind of more on a spiritual level.
Yeah.
Which is just like it's a progression for me.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, back in the day, I mean, where I would have kind of, as I said, met you and then kind of started working with you and kind of on loads of different projects over the years. But it would have been like, people talk about kind of hip hop in Ireland and Dublin kind of as a now thing, but like back 10, 15 years ago, there was a huge growth and upspring in this area, and you were essential to kind of do that with Working Class Records. Can you talk to me about how that all came about then?
So years ago, when I was young, I was about 10 years of age, I used to go into town and buy tapes on the bridge, kind of bootleg tapes, and some of those tapes were banned, like from guys like the Sugar Hill Gang and Public Enemy and so on. And when I played that music and heard it, like I remember listening to White Lions for the very first time, probably about 1980, and just going, that's where I live. That's the community that I live in. There's drugs and there's pain, and there's a willingness to kind of change away from that. And then listen to Public Enemy in terms of fight the power and so on, because I lived in a community that was in some ways set up to be this amazing community, but then, you know, dropped or left or used as a, you know, a testing ground for different policies and so on. So hip hop, that type of hip hop would have connected to me so much. And then when I was about 12, 13, I went to a youth centre, and there was music there. And as I progressed on in that youth centre, I became one of the youth workers, and then other young people would come into me. And at that time, kind of the idea of young Irish guys rapping was possible. I don't think it wasn't as possible back in the kind of early or mid 80s. You know, you had bands like Scurry era, but they were few and far between. But in about so when did I meet Lunatic? Probably in 2000. It was about 2000 that I met him. It was more, you know, Eminem was a guy that people could reference, and they go, I want to be an Eminem. So these young guys that I worked with would have come with American accents, talking about American issues. And my role there, as I seen it, was to look at your accent and your issues and stuff that's going on in your community, and to question it, to celebrate it, put it out there. Yeah, that's kind of what I've done for about 15 years.
But there was an explosion, and I mean, in a way, a proper type of explosion, an explosion that went down very, very deep, you know. And I think there's, like, you know, from working with you over many years, like I even remember, you know, Ray Yates, who's now the City Arts Officer, the project he developed, you know, with yourself around Hypnos and bringing, say, Irish language Shanno singers down from Donegal, and the realization that they had the same stories about death and pain and loss as the young lads from Ballymun and Finglas. And I suppose that realization that the more you speak your own truth, the more international relevance that it is. That's a hugely powerful thing. Yeah,
and I noticed that as well. I done a project during Brexit, when Brexit was kind of kicking off, in Ballymun with some Protestants, loyalists and unionists, and brought them to Ballymun and connected them to other working class people. And they realised very quickly that we've more in common when we speak our truth than we do that divides us. So why are we concentrating on the stuff that divides us? And that's kind of what I like to use art for, just to have those simple conversations, and not to just pay lip service to that idea of humanity and community, and not to take direction from the 24-hour news cycle. Is that we take direction from each other, that we have conversations, real, rich, deep conversations with each other. And sometimes art allows you a way in, and that's kind of why I got into stand-up comedy. Kind of allows you a way in, rather than starting the painful conversation straight away.
I mean, we'll get to the stand-up in a second, but I'm interested there just on something you said about the art and the music, because, like, say, in 2008, you were kind of part of the posse, yourself, Colin Querney, and Emma Connor's the arts development manager here, in relation to Invent, a kind of a big project for us that kind of worked with over 100 teenagers across youth services and schools. But one of the big things about that, when you're talking about speaking your truth, was also turning up. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't just going in for a week. It was actually being there over and over again and actually building up that level of kind of trust. And I think that's something you speak about a lot in relation to, like, ongoing community work, is that kind of level of trust and respect. You're not just there to kind of get something from somebody, you're there to facilitate them.
Yeah, and like I'm doing what I do in this community for 30 years, and I think I remember years ago my dad saying, "Oh, if you get a job for life, you know what I mean, stick with it." And this is kind of my job for life. This is what I do. This is what I wake up and think about doing. And as you know, I probably have 4 or 5 other things ticking away and plots and schemes in the background that nobody kind of knows about until everybody knows about them. And they're all kind of related to how can we improve the situation that we have? How can we reduce pain in our country or in our communities, and using different tools to do that? So this is who I am. This is what I do. I'm privileged enough to not have to, I'm not living in survival mode like so many of the people who live around me. I'm privileged enough to have a good job, to have an education, to have contacts and resources and networks that I can use to help reduce the pain and suffering in communities like Ballymun.
And come here, how did you get on in school? We said they had a good education. The kind of school fit you in?
Yeah, I was good in school. I was a bit of a messer, and one of the reasons I could get away with messing is because I was intelligent, so I had all the information there. So it kind of gave me a bit of room to play around. And then I realized that I kind of realized I should stop doing that and allow other people to thrive as well. It's not all about me, you know. And then I would have gone on and done, studied computer science and done a degree and all that type of stuff. So yeah, school and academia, and I love school. So, it's cliche, but the best years of my life. But the years I'm living now are the best years of my life as well. I like to embrace whatever moment I'm in.
Yeah. And come here, I mean, the lads, Working Class Records, okay, seminal in the development of, I think it's also interesting because people say it's seminal in the development of Irish hip hop, but I think it's seminal in the development of the Irish music scene, kind of full stop, rather than kind of trying to, pigeonhole it off. But also, you kind of those people that you were listening to, you kind of worked with them and got to support them, and got that it was no mean feat what happened.
Yeah, so we would have played with all of our heroes, and that was by design. It wasn't just by fluke. We aspired to do that. We reached out. We made the contacts. We made the music, and just like young guys are doing now. But we were kind of pioneers in an Irish sense, that we got to play with Wu-Tang and Nas and Kanye and Snoop, and these because we were producing the goods and we were bringing the party and bringing the music. These things happened. If the standard wasn't there, if it wasn't world class, and that's kind of was one of the things I used to say to the lads, we can be world class, we just have to do it. You know what I mean? And then also for ourselves, the litmus test was when you listen to Nas, the hair stand up on your arm. So when you listen to you guys, the hair should stand up on your arm. It should connect, it should be real, and that will resonate. And also, you have an Irish accent, which is exotic as soon as you leave Ireland.
Yeah.
So let's use that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the amazing things. Like I remember when, and obviously you mentioned Danny there, Lunatic, amazing rapper, amazing musician, died young. But before that, he got an opportunity to play with all these guys, and also I'll never forget, the beginnings of that Hypnos, and then leading to obviously when Danny had passed an amazing night in Vicar Street, and seeing all the exotic accents and colors and people from all over the world, from South Africa to America, to Hispanic America, to Donegal. And I think that was great testament to where those basic drive in you and the lads was. This stands in that international space.
Yeah, and that stretches over time. Like I would be in contact with the New York guys, Moana and Carlos, all the time. I just met some of the South African guys when I was in South Africa at Christmas. So those connections are real because what people like Dan done resonated, and what people like Carlos and Moana done resonated back.
Yeah.
So that kind of thread continues on through.
Yeah.
And although Dan did die young, there's a thread there. The music resonates. The message resonates.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, even I was chatting on one of these interviews. I interviewed Maverick Sabre, and again, obviously you were referenced, but all those artists as well, and then the kind of new wave that came through, like Lethal Dialect, and although so I think there absolutely is resonance, and I think it's also the social justice element is the bit that binds the internationalism together, as you said earlier. Come here, the comedy side of you, like back in those heady days when Des Bishop came out here, and what attracted you to that theme to kind of be part of all that?
Probably the desire to be liked, to be listened to be heard, to have your voice heard, to be able to put words to ideas that you had. And then also, I'd be naturally buzzy and naturally funny. So if I'm hanging out with my mates or hanging out with my girlfriend, I'm having a crack all the time. So like Ricky Gervais says, it's trying to translate that kind of crack you'd have in the pub or with your mates onto stage. And I wanted to give it a go. And I'd done it for 10 years and I really enjoyed it. And I had 2 sellout shows in the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which is something that I didn't imagine was going to be in my life when I started. But like everything that I try and do it world class. So why wouldn't you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have that belief in myself that whatever I do, if I put the time and energy and the truth into it, it will travel.
But I mean, out of all that, yourself, Willa, and Eric set up the House of Fun Comedy Club, and you kind of played with all the big guns over a good few years in Ballymun, and it became a place to be. It became a place for all these comedians to come. I mean, and again, that both of your skills there, your own artistry, but also your skill set in kind of bringing people together.
Yeah, like we have. As Irish people, we have the gift of the gab. We live in an island, so we're not disconnected from our communities. So I think we see the whole world as our community, and we can reach out to anybody. You know what I mean? On our through small social media now, it's even a lot more easier. So I would have that within me. Just ring them, just drop down to them, just invite them out. And 9 times out of 10, they want to do it, and it's just about availability then. So I found that with everything, it's about availability. And guys love to come to Ballymun because it's Ballymun. It's amazing, And Tommy Tiernan played the Access Theatre that you run there when we had the House of Fun Comedy Club there. And he went backstage. He'd done an hour and a half, and he went backstage and he cried for about an hour. And he said, "This is the room. This is the room." And there's a few of those rooms in the world, as the great musicians or the great comedians know. And Damo would have said the same. Damo would have said that is the room where you get that energy. You get the instant feedback from a community that is dying to connect with you.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And then I suppose not only did you kind of you do that role, but you also then kind of you're so you think you're funny, that kind of your where you worked with comedians, and that didn't start here. You've been working across that in town. And how did that come about then, Dean, in relation to you facilitating other people who might not have felt they were comedians to kind of develop their skills?
That's how it came about. I just facilitated it. I just done it. I love to learn stuff and transfer those skills to people who want to acquire them. That's something that I'm really inspired by and that drives me. So there's knowledge that I have and somebody else is looking for it.
Yeah.
I will, if I have the time and the energy, go there.
Yeah.
Because I know it worked for me. Because when I was looking for something or lacking something as a way of solving, problems in my own head, what are we doing? What are we doing here? You know what I mean? People would have done that for me, especially people like my mate Sparky. He would have transferred skills for about 10 years in my direction, and I would have drank them up. And that's probably why I'm a youth worker as well, because I like to do that, to connect with people, see where they're at, and see if there's any way that I could help them or work with them or, add any value to their life.
I think, again, for those that don't know you, I think that, needs to be said. You kind of have worked in and out of youth work for most of your kind of professional adult life. And I think, that's no accident, you know, both from people hiring you to do it, but also from your skill set. And what do you get from that, Dean?
I get a sense of purpose, a sense of being alive. That, look, the way I see it is, you arrive here, you're alive. You might as well live. You know, because I don't know what's at the end. I don't know where I came from, but I know I'm here. I don't know where I'm going to. So while I'm here, I'm going to live, I'm going to give, I'm going to love, I'm going to learn, and I'm going to share that with as many people as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that resonates with me. So when I wake up in the morning, that's kind of my aim. How can I live more? How can I love more? How can I help reduce pain more? That's the direction that I face in every day.
And is it hard sometimes to, you know, because I said, you know, you're in the kind of empathetic space, you're in the kind of arts, cultural, creative, social, political space. You know, you mentioned going swimming. Is it hard sometimes to kind of, you know, keep yourself calm in that? Because I mean, that's an awful lot of inputs into you.
Yeah, it's about finding a balance. And a few times in my life, and one recently enough, about a year and a half ago, that balance tipped over into what's going on. I feel depressed. I feel shit. You know what I mean? And it's at those kind of moments. So I've had 2 or 3 of those moments over the last 40 odd years, which I don't think on balance is bad.
Yeah.
Because of the amount of me that I give out to the world. You know. So for me, it's about you know, what I put into my body in terms of music, media, news, food, alcohol, and getting the balance right with all that type of stuff. Doing yoga, swimming, being around, you know, really nice people that appreciate me for who I am, and trying to stay out of all of the toxic soup that is available to all of us all day, every day if we want it. Yeah. So what I'm trying to do is midstream as much as possible and avoid the drama, which is something that I'm choosing to do. I'm choosing to stay away from drama.
Yeah. And come here, talk to me then. I mean, like, we'll go back on some of the music stuff in a minute, but I'm interested in, like, say, over the last decade or maybe over the last kind of, you know, the stuff that was there in an inverted way or a kind of more, you know, facilitative way through your work. I remember talking to you about, you know, 6, 7, or 8 years ago, and the conversations in your head were becoming more different and more about kind of bringing people together, or more about you being very inquisitive about talking to people about where you're at, about talking to people, you know, that you didn't know, or getting them in a room, or having sitting room conversations. Or where did that start happening for you? But that's something you just kind of went, okay, I need to find out more about these things, or I need to meet more people, or what, you know, what was that?
Well, I think as we dip our toe into the world as young adults, we realize very quickly, unless we're naive or too full of ego, that we don't really know everything that we think we know. There's a lot of gaps. There's a lot of areas that I don't understand. There's a lot of conversations that I haven't had with myself, or that I haven't having regularly with other people. And I try to find people willing to have different conversations. And one of the conversations that I kind of started to have, and you kind of were very kind, allowing me to do some of those in Access, was the conversation about homelessness, and what is homelessness, and what do we do with it, and that kind of that pulling people together from different backgrounds in Access and in other rooms, fed something that became probably the biggest thing that I've ever done in my life. You know, which was the start of maybe ending homelessness in this country, which was Apollo House and Home Sweet Home.
Yeah, and I mean, like, there's one thing having conversations, but then, you know, when you find yourself in Apollo House at the beginning of it, and, you know, that was a seminal time in a lot of kind of socio-political or cultural, kind of, you know, it was, you know, a perfect storm in a way, and also a perfect act of love, and pre-Christmas. I had it all, you know, it kind of awoke a different type of, say, empathy. But when you found yourself, and I know this has been well documented in the documentary, so I'm not going to go too far into it, but when you found yourself in the house when all this going around you? Was there a sense of, holy Jesus Christ, what's after going on here?
Yeah, I kind of always knew I could do it and that it needed to happen, but when you're in the middle of it, it kind of slows down, and it's like you're in like platoon or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's you can see things differently. Um, you're starting to hear team music in your head almost. You know what I mean? So you kind of have to grab onto people and say, "Help me keep grounded in this situation." And it helps when you're not the only one in the room, because sometimes you can feel a bit mad when you do something like that, that you're the only one that's driving this. But when there's a few people there, you can kind of hold on to each other and go, come on, lads. For some reason, we were all brought together in this space to do this thing. We know it's really, really weird and hard, but this is where we are. This is where we have. This is where our lives have led to this moment.
Yeah.
You know, and just constantly going back to love. You know, constantly going back to that, and that's the agenda, or that's the palette in which we choose to create this art piece. You know what I mean? That's kind of what it worked out. I remember saying to Glenn that, you know, he writes albums, but this is my album.
Yeah. No, and I think, I mean, not to, you know, I mean, I think on a macro sense with Apollo House, and like knowing you for many, many years before that, and kind of since, there is a sense of like, you know, remember us talking for years about what your art was and what, but I think that is not Apollo House necessarily, but like what that's a manifestation of your art form. Do you know what I mean? That kind of sense of following love, following a set of values, and sometimes it goes wrong, sometimes it goes right, but the value system that you hold true, and that's hard. I mean, and I think, you know, I remember, you know, it must have been amazing though, Dean, when you realized that you caught the public, that it was kind of a sense of like when all the stuff started arriving to the house, or when the sing-along was on outside or on the roof. Like, there must be moments there when you realize there's a galvanizing piece after happening here.
Yeah, and then and there's also a moment when you realize there's certain bits of this that are beyond my control, you know, which is can be a little bit scary, but you just kind of have to let it go and realize what you can and cannot control. But then there is some kind of formula to piercing through the bland noise of you know, everyone, you know, the daily news feed, you know, and that's kind of what we do. We pierce through that, and the tool we used to pierce through that was, you know, was love.
Yeah.
And I knew that was possible and that I could do it, but doing it, knowing you can do it and doing it are two different things.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. There's, because with all the talk, and obviously there's privacy issues, but I think it's not spoken about enough that the amount of people that were helped during Apollo. Do you know what I mean? Like the macro stuff was about, you know, stopping homelessness and all that sort of stuff. But actually, on a very operational level, the people that you housed there for that period of time, you know, and obviously
we had about 100 people through the doors in that month. And like recently, I had the privilege of working in a cocooning unit with homeless people during COVID. And the sense of love and community and respect and humanity that was in the place where I was for 2 or 3 months was exactly the same that we created in Apollo House. The only difference is that our government fully supported the one that I just left.
Yeah.
And that is the difference. And that's what I'm trying to, that's the conversation I'm trying to have on a national level. Why, under one set of circumstances, do people die on the streets? And we've had 5 deaths this week of homeless people. And then under a different set of circumstances, that homeless people thrive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They don't just survive, that this guy is thriving, and that they change how people are treated fundamentally. They're treated not as problems, but as humans.
Well, I think that goes to the heart of a lot of things. And, you know, it's about, rather than solving problems, it's facilitating people thriving. Because the minute you start, the minute you continually view people as problems, then it's just something that you have to solve rather than actually facilitating them having a life and having goals and having dreams and ambitions. And I think, from all your work, that would strike me, whether that be working with, young people, working with yourself, working with artists, I think it is, and that's why I've loved working with you over the years. You see no difference between, a multi-millionaire American rap artist and Sean from across the street here. Do you know what I mean? They're people. And
yeah, because there is no difference, because Sean and that multi-million artist wasn't here, and then they are here, and then they won't be here, okay? On a human or spiritual level. Yeah. So we all came from the same place, then we're here, and then we all go to this, whatever the same place is. And that's the way I see it. So I would connect with the spirit and the humanity of everyone equally.
Yeah.
And I would communicate with them and reach out to them equally. Like I'm working with a young traveller guy here in Ballymun, and 2 hours later I'm ringing Jim Sheridan to have a meet with him, and we're talking about very, very similar things in a very similar way.
Yeah.
So I personally don't see a difference there.
Yeah. No.
And I'm trying to help. I'm trying to facilitate others to see it that way as well.
Yeah.
Because I think that that's one way that we can progress in a more human way.
I've absolutely fundamentally agree with you, and it's fundamentally our kind of core value system here. And I'm interested, Dean, in relation to, you talk about, say, your art and your work and your drive and but there's also a sense like things like Apollo House and other artists that you were involved in that, but then other artists who are friends or co-workers with you. There is a sense there of a deep. I'm sorry. When you're talking there, it's funny. The phrase won't leave me. One of my we both love Lazarus Soul. They're a fantastic band, and obviously Brian's done some stuff with you in the past. But the last words on their last album, and I'm going to probably misphrase this, but he says, sometimes I worry about death, but then I remember before I was born, I didn't exist and it wasn't so bad. And you're kind of going,
yeah, there was no pain.
You're kind of going, that's amazing.
That's it.
And I think it's kind of going, that phrase kind of resonates, but it's also that sense of then, and it's very devolving, that kind of Catholic kind of stuff from us, a kind of going, this veil of tears and this, all that sort of stuff, kind of going, well, what are we here for, and what can we do to help others in this space?
Oh, that's it. So when I was younger, when I was about 7 or 8, usually, if you had all your needs met when you were a kid, you can resolve your existential angst by about the age of 7 or 8, because you've seen your goldfish die and you realise Mommy and Daddy is going to die as well, and I'm going to die, and we resolve that. But if you're in a survival mode and your needs aren't being met, that existential resolution gets pushed forward, and it can go as far as to the end of your life, until the priest comes in and gives you the last rites, and then you kind of get this epiphany. So we can last as long as that, and that's kind of where most people are at. So when I was about 7 or 8, I used to cry my eyes out all the time. I don't want to die, I don't want to die. And I'd run in and I would put my head in my ma's bosom and she'd hold me. Yeah? And what I've learned is that I can be a bosom for me and for other people as well, in terms of what we're all doing here. And like, I live in a community that's knee deep in trauma and pain and drug addiction. And a lot of it is centered around this kind of fear or this feeling or this, we don't know what this is. What are we doing here? What is this game? And what I have sussed out using different methods and different medicines and yoga and so on is that it's about love. It's about love. I came from something which was love. I'm here, and I will go back to something which is love.
Yeah.
And that is with me, not just every day, but every moment of every day since I remember my baptism at about 4 weeks of age.
Yeah. And do you get that sense? I mean, you mentioned there as well, the tribal sense of kind of swimming and diving and, you know, cycling, you know, like when you go out there to your private locations to swim, is that something that's still there for you, Dean?
What do you mean? Is what there?
That sense of a communion, I suppose, for want of a different word, for kind of that.
Yeah, for me, it's like a daily baptism, or it's a reconnection back to the universe or to the womb. So recently, I brought a friend of mine out who was suicidal, and I brought him out to swim and got him to lie him on his back. And as he was lying on his back, he was paddling like this. I was going, "What are you paddling for?" And he was saying, "I'm paddling because I don't want to drown." And I said, "I thought you wanted to die." And he said, "Oh," and he just had a little moment. He had this physical reaction to his head going below the waterline, where there was something in him. And it's that something, that life energy, that I like to revisit every single day. And now he swims 2 or 3 times a week, and he's less likely to want to resolve his life by killing himself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I have the privilege of having that every day. And I was just off the phone to a mate of mine, Hector, in London. He's in a city of like 7, 8, 9, 10 million people, and he is gagging at the bit to come back here and have those moments where he feels connected to himself and to everybody else on a human level, and not just kind of pulling and grabbing animalistic level. That is possible also.
I mean, it's fascinating because, you know, my mother's side of the family are from rural Ireland, and I spent most of my kind of teen up to the age of 16, 17 down there every summer, and kind of in this small village in Offaly. And but when I came out, I mean, I've been in Ballymun lots of times before I came out to work here, but there's a sense of this area as being in a real rural space that has, you know, buildings on it, but it retains that. And I think what you're talking about there is a very rural Irish spirituality. Do you know what I mean? That it was there pre-Catholicism, pre-whatever, and that is still, and I think it's still connected through an awful lot of great Irish artists. I mean, for example, you know, one of the most beautiful things I remember seeing here through the time of the end of the generation was what yourself, Macer, and Damo did on the side of one of the terror blocks. You know, that statement of, and that you see that picture now all over the world of his lyrics and Mace, and those big statements as well. I mean, that seems to be important to you too, Dean. Those kind of macro works like graffiti.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Like I think when you walk out of your door and you look at something that opens your heart, whether that's, you know, a massive art piece by Mazer or Subset, or whether it's a performance in a theatre, or whether it's a live band, when you come out of your own home and you see that, you realize that you're not here alone, that there is a connection, that there's other people that you can resonate with outside of your family group. And that fascinates me, because when I was a kid, my family, my ma and my dad were superheroes, and my brothers and sisters were me buddies till the end. And then you realize that there's other people live next door, and there's people 2 doors down, and there's people in the next town, and you can connect with them and have fun with them and grow and learn from them as well. And I'm just trying to share that that understanding with as many people as possible, because for me, we're all one. We're all, like, universally, spiritually, humanly, we're all one. There's absolutely no difference. And if I get a kick and a buzz from looking at something like a mural or a hip-hop video or a bit of stand-up comedy, I'm guaranteed that other people are going to get a kick out of that. So why wouldn't we do it? Why would we stop doing that?
Yeah. And come here, did you ever, beyond the comedy, have you ever performed? Do you play any, like, has there ever been any other, like when you were a kid, were you forced into tin whistle? Was there any kind of other outpouring of creative side in you?
So I produce music, and I just set up a collective in Ballymun with Sparky and a number of artists from around the country. So this will be about the 4th collective that I've set up in the last 40 years. so I do that. I play guitar. I chanced my arm at a bit of acting, but I'm really only into acting for social change. You know what I mean? Or to kind of. So I'd love to do a bit of acting if it was the right piece that kind of really resonated with people, because I think, Marvel superhero films just, they're interesting. They're great hangover kind of films, but they're not my bag,
Yeah.
But there are films out there that do resonate, and documentaries kind of more. And that's why I would have made Broken Song. That's why I would have documented the Apollo House thing.
Yeah.
Because I think what I'm trying to do there is, people didn't have the opportunity to live through that moment, so let's just capture it and give them a glimpse of it, and for the possibility to start a conversation.
I mean, I think Broken Song, Claire Dix, it's a beautiful piece of filmmaking, but it does capture that a moment in time culturally as well. I think it's really interesting to look back on it now. I'm always fascinated by stuff that's called new, when a lot of it's already happened about a decade ago. Do you know what I mean? An awful lot of the conversations that are around hip hop now were ones that were being had 20 years ago. And there's a sense.
Yeah, and I kind of have that. I have that kind of conversation with me, and sometimes I'm like a dog with a bone with that conversation. And I question, whether or not that's a class thing, or do people get recognized and get their opportunities, blasted all over the media because of a class thing, or because of who they know, and then sometimes I just go, just let it happen, Don't be focusing on that type of stuff. Just do what you do your art, and do it for your truth, and don't be looking to do it to be better than other people, because we're all one.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think there are many, many different reasons why things are picked up in mainstream or so. And some of them are for right reasons, because, but some of them are obviously because it sells paper, or it gets clicks, or for whatever reasons. And it's about trying to find your way through that. And as you say yourself there, Dean, I mean, like that, I don't mean middle ground is a bad thing, but that space is very hard to mine sometimes. That facilitative space where all voices can exist in. That's particularly in an age of toxicity that we're in at the moment. That can be very hard.
Yeah, but like, for me, it's a kind of a midstreaming. So if I do that as a daily practice, I just stay in the middle of the river and just paddle along, and don't try and get to the end of the river first, or don't go over to the drama, the little eddies on the side. I'm going to stay away from them. What will happen will happen, and if I proceed in that way, with my intelligence, with my love, with my resources at hand, and also push myself and challenge myself, and go into those rooms that sometimes I'm afraid to go into, and stand in that room and look around and invite other people in. I'm really interested in that for some reason, because there are rooms and compartments and places within us, as Irish people, and as humans, that we just don't want to go in. We're not ready to go into. And one of them for us is kind of like the abuse stuff, or the famine stuff, and so on, that we haven't fully gone into. And I think eventually, for our spiritual resolution, that we will go in there. But there's no point in forcing it. It's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, and I quote you for this because it's such a brilliant thought. I think it's in the conversation about, it could be 7 or 8 years ago, Dean, when we were talking about, methods of kind of engagement, methods of bringing people together. And you said that, that up north, 20 years ago, or, that there was a reconciliation process, that there was a process that was gone through by the state, or by 3 states in a way, to kind of, to try and find a way of moving on. And it's a process that we haven't had here, in relation to many, many things. And, it's funny, I've kind of, that thought's been developing in my head for many, many years around, looking at how do we audit in a way where our state is. Do you know what I mean? Over the last, 70 to 100 years. Because you're right, there's no point in just changing things for the sake of changing them unless we're all agreed why we're doing what we're doing. So I think that piece, and it's a brilliant phrase about Ireland needing that sort of reconciliation process from a place that it was across many issues.
Yeah, and I think in certain respects, just in that line, that we are starting to come into, we're no longer juveniles, you know, or we're leaving that. So if you can imagine the last 100 years, we kind of grew up 1 year every, you know,
Yeah.
every 10 years. So we're about 10, 11 years of age. So we're entering kind of teenage puberty kind of vibes now, where we're starting to become a bit more self-aware. We're no longer dependent on mommy and daddy, you know, and we're starting to realize that we have to depend on ourselves,
Yeah.
and we have to look around and see who else can we work with. And I think that's where we're at. And as you know, with teenagers, because I know when I was 10 years of age, I had a skinhead and a machete and a Honda 50. I was a majo.
Yeah.
But by the age of 12, I had settled down. I had met friends that would be guys that I would connect with for the rest of my life. And I realised that now I'm on the process of becoming a young man.
Yeah.
And I think nationally, I think you know, as a country, that's a good analogy for me. That works for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? And we're doing it. We're doing it. You know, we're having those conversations, and I think we're going to have more of them. Just, it doesn't need to be such a big rush. They will happen.
Yeah.
Will happen.
Come here. I'm gonna leave it at that. It's a great way to finish, and I want to say also, Dean, that I'm really glad that you introduced yourself at the beginning as an artist, because I think, you know, your whole life, your creative practice since I've known you has been just incredible, and it's an absolute joy to have you around, to know you, and I'm looking forward to actually getting away from this Zoom over the next month. For anyone that finds this, we're at the end, well, hopefully at the end of the first wave, and hopefully there won't be a massive second one of COVID. We're at the end, beginning of August, end of July, beginning of August in 2020. So yeah, I'm hoping to have a couple with you in real liminal space soon.
Yeah, I love them. I cherish those moments, and I think what you're doing here for you, for Access, for Ballymun, and for the country is very important, and that it resonates with people. Because if it didn't, you wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, true.
I think it connects, and I've watched a number of them with Mav and with Lenny and so on, and that would have inspired me to reach out and go, I'd love to have a chat with
you. Yeah, cool, Dean. Thanks a million. Talk to you soon.
you. One love. Thank you.